To the Point with Congressman Bill Pascrell, focusing on the concerns and issues facing the families of New Jersey's 9th Congressional District.
Hello, I'm Congressman Bill Pascrell, and I would like to welcome you to this latest edition of To the Point. I want to welcome all our new viewers and listeners from the 27 new towns that I have now in Bergen County, and 2 new towns, Secaucus and part of Kearney in Hudson County, and 1 new town in Passaic County, that is the town of Hawthorne. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to be your congressman for the next 2 years. We do this show once a month, and we'll be anxious to hear from you. In October, Hurricane Sandy bore down on New Jersey, bringing heavy rainfall and high winds resulting in unprecedented damage to homes and businesses. Bergen County, first responders had to evacuate entire towns after the Hackensack River rose over its banks, flooding several towns with as much as 5 feet of water. Many towns up and down New Jersey's coastline saw a similar or worse fate, with flooding from the storm surge. At the end, the storm left 2.4 million households without power, unfathomable, and caused over $30 billion in damage. But now that the floodwaters have receded, where are we in the rebuilding process, and what steps are going to be taken to better prepare for future disasters? With me today are 3 people to help answer those questions. Bill Vogel is FEMA's Deputy Federal Coordinating Officer and is responsible for the overseeing of the agency's response to Hurricane Sandy in New Jersey. Ralph LaRosa is President and Chief Operating Officer of Public Service Electric and Gas, one of the 10 largest electric companies in the United States, serving nearly 3/4 of New Jersey's population. And Walt Wargacki is the Mayor of Wallington, a good mayor from a good town, community along the Passaic River that was hit hard by both Hurricanes Irene and Sandy. Thank you all for being with me today. I welcome you to the Point. Let's move this show. This is we've gone through a tough situation since October the 29th. It's interesting, the snowstorm was October 29th the year before. That's right. October 29th. I wonder what's in store for us this year. Ralph, what do you think? You had a bird's eye seat in this whole thing, and you've been through a few of these storms. Maybe not as president. How long have you been president now?
6 years.
So you've seen them all, the worst of them. What's your take on how bad the storm is and how the electric company responded?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, I've never seen anything like this. I don't think any of us have. We really had 2 major events if you step back and think about it. One was the storm surge that we had up Newark Bay that impacted all the rivers in the northern part of the state. I mean, that was just unfathomable to us just a few years back. And then we also had the high winds that came across with the storm, and that created all sorts of damage from trees and other aspects. So, we were facing, I think as a state, 2 separate incidents that all came together at one time. And then layer on top of that, the nor'easter that came in the middle of the restoration process and some additional damage that we had there. It was crazy. But, I think we've got a lot to be proud of. I'm not just talking about the electric companies. I think all of us together. I think the federal government did a great job coming together and giving us support, trying to get, we used FEMA to help us out with gasoline and some other things.
Did you have time to prepare for this?
We had about 4 days of preparation, but the 4 days of preparation, no offense to any of the folks that were watching, may watch some of the weather forecasts, but those weather forecasters didn't exactly get it right. We were prepared for winds, but the wind speed that we were prepared for was around 45 to 55 miles an hour. They were much higher than that, and they were for a much longer period of time. So the winds were sustained for over an hour. I remember looking in our building in Newark. We have a wind gauge up at the top, and it was running at 100 miles an hour for 2 or 3 hours at a point.
Fortunately, we didn't get the rain, but we got all the wind.
Yeah, that was the one thing they got right. We got about the right amount of. They said it would give somewhere about 1 inch of rain, and that's about what we got. But the storm surge was the crazy part. I mean, when you really look at what we saw come into this area, lower Manhattan and northern New Jersey, and the amount of damage that caused, that was totally unexpected 2 or 3 days before the storm. So while we were able to prepare, we weren't able to sandbag and move things and do everything that we would have liked to do if we had gotten that heads up.
Look, give yourself a grade. 1 to 5, 5 being the best. What do you think you did? What do you think the electric company did? You're an honest guy. I know you. I know your background. You've always been a straightforward, particularly with me when I've asked questions about it, because I can be a hound on some things.
It's good.
But what's your grade? What do you give yourselves?
You know, I think we did. I'd probably put us in the 4 range. I'd say that the folks that were out in the field working, they get a 5. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Those
guys were working
and
hard.
gals working every day. I was at the command center in Garden State because you had 5 of them all over the state of New Jersey. How did they work?
What we did was we had crews come in from all over the country, and they supported us. Great. The industry pulled together, but you know, there was the whole East Coast that was hit. Right. So we brought in 1,000 people in advance of the storm, 1,000 line folks in advance.
That was before
it even hit. So that was some of the preparation we did. But again, when we saw the damage that came, we started asking for every crew we could. We wound up with 4,000 people that were just in addition to our workforce that were here helping us out. And so it worked really well. We had gasoline. We went a lot of other places, and we normally use about 20,000 gallons of diesel a day. We were using 60,000 gallons a day, just because of all the extra folks that we had.
I'm going to ask you about that. I want to review what these other utility companies have sent the trucks into New Jersey, and how that went, how the coordination went. Because what I saw in the command post was I would give a 5, 1 out of 5. I thought it worked very, very, very well, but we always can improve, obviously. Yeah. Certainly our customers believe we can always improve.
Well, where we can really improve, and this is where I give us a little bit lower grade, is the communication. It's really difficult for us. All those crews that were in here helping us out, we're still working on paper. We don't have a bunch of computers in the trucks to communicate back and forth. So we had to wait for the end of the day to get information about what work was completed, and then we'd set up the work plans for the next day. It was tough to communicate with the customers.
It would seem to me, and I want to get on to the mayor, it would seem to me that would be a wise investment that the federal government should help you make, and that is because we saw the problems after 9/11, because this is a catastrophe too. While we lost so many more lives in that murderous event, this is nature, and you don't know. Nature is a very unpredictable kind of thing, as Bill will tell you. What can we do to improve that communications, and what help do you guys need? Because when folks understand how much money you spent in this whole thing to make this work, it's just mind-boggling. Mayor, let me ask you a question. I asked Ralph the question. Let me ask you the question. You got to deal with public service. You got a lot of wires down. You got a lot of people out of service. How did Wallington fare? And what would you recommend or suggest to Ralph?
Well, I would give him a 5 because we had 90% of our residents without electricity. And we finally got a crew in from West Palm Beach, Florida. And I didn't let them go. We bought them lunch. We wanted them to dedicate themselves to servicing our town. I had poll numbers written down where we had wires down between poll numbers, so we were specific in telling them, you know, where the problems were. I had individual services down, and once we got them in, they have, I guess, wiring sheets, and they're only supposed to take care of the circuits that were assigned to them. But if you could give them the wiring sheets for our entire community, it would have expedited the repairs a little bit better. What happened was they took care of all the problems in the one line, and then they says, look, we can't go in that area because we didn't have the details for it. But once we got them there, I twisted their arm to take care of the major points where they were obvious. You saw a huge primary line down. It burnt a hole in the sidewalk, you know, because of the power. And then it blew out the
Did you have substations underwater?
No, Wallington doesn't have any substations.
Thank God.
Yes. Well, we're serviced by a substation in East Rutherford, which fortunately was up high, and it didn't have any damage, such as the one in Bayonne or in
Ralph,
Harrison.
that's another question the mayor brings up. The substations, many of them were underwater. Are you looking at the location of these substations to expedite recovery? Because some of them seem to me to be in an odd place. location.
Right. Well, so let's think back to how they got there. One of the things was when the electric grid was built out in the 20s, folks built the grid where the load pocket was. So we were an area where we had commerce coming in from all the bays, and that's where the industry was, so that's where the electrical grid
That's where the water is.
And that's where the water is. And now with climate change, and I won't get into that debate, but what we've got to figure out is how do we protect these stations? So we're looking at three options, actually four. The first is, well, for areas that are going to be flooded, low-lying areas, we'll put some sandbags, we'll do some things proactively to have them there. Put some permanent walls up in some places, we can pump around them in different places. And we're actually using the FEMA maps to determine where we're going to be. There was they were just republished, and we're going to focus on that. Great thing that we got from the federal government.
Very important part of this.
Yep. And the other thing we're doing is we're going to raise some. So we're just going to take the equipment and raise it up where we can, and that'll help us in some places. But for those areas where we can't do the first three, we're going to build some redundancy in. And as the mayor said, there's areas where we can move to higher geography, and we'll get to those higher elevations, and we'll build a redundancy in there.
Bill Vogel, FEMA. I give FEMA a 4.5 in this storm. I think it did a great job. I've seen FEMA operate with 10 years ago, so 7, 8 years ago. I would give it a 2 at best. What's the difference?
Congressman, the thing that FEMA has done is we have become very, very concerned about the whole community. And FEMA certainly isn't the only agency that can assist.
Right.
And we have done a much better job in reaching out prior to events, doing the coordination with state and local governments, continuing to work with state and local governments to plan, to see what we might be able to do in order to be able to prepare for.
That's critical to this whole thing, isn't it?
That's exactly right. To prepare for and be ready to be able to respond with you rather than wait until afterwards and then come and try to respond after. So I think the federal government, the Federal Emergency Management Agency has done a great job in making sure that they're engaged in the preparation and the planning prior to the time that we have an event.
The immensity of this storm, I want to get to when we come back from the break, and how do you respond? Are you shocked to see this amount of households, this amount of outages in terms of electricity and power? So when we come back from the break, I just want to quickly get back to the mayor again. Mayor, you gave public service a good grade. What about the citizens of your community? Because that's what it comes down to most of the time, whether they're patient with you. Whether
our citizens, complained because they were without power. It's a natural thing. But they were understanding because they knew, that they weren't as bad as, a lot of other people. But our problem was in Wallington, where the Passaic River flooded over again. And in those areas,
you had those homes down in that one area.
Yes, there was no electricity to start their sump pumps, and that caused a little bit of an inconvenience.
Right.
We also had a situation where a police station had a standby power supply generator that went down at like 12 midnight, and we got it up and repaired because it's probably about 70 years old. We now purchased another generator. We're putting it outside so that we won't have that problem. But I'd like to know if FEMA would have any funds available to purchase generators for some of our emergency services buildings.
Think about what you're going to answer. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come right back. And please hold on and join us, because these are 3 folks who've been there, fought the fight. They were in the middle of it. And while politicians like to take the credit, it's the local mayors, it's the utility person who runs the show, and of course FEMA with its oversight, so we can continue to understand what this storm is and how we're going to get back on our feet. So we'll be right back in a second.
For the millions living with COPD, breathing becomes a real struggle. COPD stands for chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, but you may have heard of it as chronic bronchitis or emphysema. Over time, it makes it harder and harder to breathe until you feel like you're breathing through a straw. COPD is the 4th leading cause of death in the US. It kills 1 person every 4 minutes, and it took my grandmother. An estimated 24 million Americans are affected, but as many as half of them don't even know it. It's a race against time to spread the word about this serious disease. If you're over 35 and have ever smoked, you could be at risk. The good news is, there are steps you can take to improve your symptoms. I'm Danica Patrick, and I drive for COPD. Take action today to breathe better tomorrow. Join the movement at driveforcopd.com, take our screening questionnaire today, and talk to your doctor.
This is your new kitten, or your new puppy. Every day, 70,000 puppies and kittens just like them are born in the U.S. Cute, right? Well, what's not cute is that half of all litters are accidents. And when a kitten has a litter of oopsies and a puppy has a litter of uh-ohs, pretty soon you have thousands and thousands of WTFs. And that leads to millions of pets being killed in shelters each year. But if 80% of pet owners say they believe in spaying and neutering, then what gives? Well, it turns out those sweet little fuzzballs can get pregnant sooner than you think. A lot sooner. But here's the good news. You can stop the accident before it happens. You just have to remember one number. 4, as in 4 months. When you bring home Maggie or Ruby or Puddle or Clyde, get them fixed at 4 months. It can be old enough to get pregnant, and it's definitely young enough to make a difference. Prevent more, fix at month 4.
Yeah, but did you see how much he had to drink last night? I can't believe that guy made it home. Nobody drives drunk anymore. Hold on, I got another call coming in.
While drunk driving rates have dropped greatly, negligent driving and speeding fatalities have skyrocketed. Someone dies every 13 minutes from negligent driving, so keep your hands on the wheel, your eyes on the road, and your phone put away.
Welcome back. We have 3 great guests today. Bill Vogel, Deputy Federal Coordinator of FEMA, Ralph LaRussa, President, Chief Operating Officer of PSE&G, and our great mayor from Wallington, Mayor Wargacki. You're there. You're on the front lines, Mayor, and you see it all. So you're like all the mayors in the Shore area, in Moonachie, in Little Furry, Long Island, Bayonne, Hoboken, Lower Manhattan. You're there. You're in the front lines. You can't put a committee together. You got to act and act accordingly. How'd your first responders do?
We're blessed with a lot of volunteers in Wallington, and our first responders, we were actually initiated with Hurricane Irene, and we had it down pretty well pat with the Hurricane Sandy. In fact, at 12 o'clock at midnight, we were responding to Moonachie to evacuate people there because we stabilized our community, and a lot of people in our community, we pre-warned them. We communicated with them through Nextel, through computers, and they were aware of what's going on before the power failed. They all evacuated their homes because they figured they're going to get the same surge that Hurricane Sandy did. So our evacuation was at a minimum in Wallington. But like I said, at midnight, our guys went and helped out Moonachie because they were never faced with this before. They had no idea of what was going on, and our guys were familiar with what was going on. They actually went to a trailer court. They evacuated a lot of the residents there, and they did a fine job for me. I went there myself. My son has a big Army truck. I was waist high in water, put a ladder up to the truck and had the people get up onto the truck, and we took them to their to higher grounds where they were evacuated to a shelter at Teterboro.
You know what annoys me? All the volunteers New Jersey sent down to Katrina, to Florida, regardless. We're always the first. Our police, our fire, our EMTs even have gone to all of these places, and they were the very states, most of those particular congressmen who voted against aid for New Jersey. It took us 80 days, where it took us only 10 days to have a voice vote on Katrina. Yet, when you compare Sandy and Katrina and Rita, because they occurred basically at the same time, there were 346,000 units damaged or destroyed in New Jersey, and 214,700 destroyed or damaged in Katrina. Our power outages, 2,400,000 800,000, 3 times more in this Sandy strike here. And the businesses impacted, like 6, 7 times more businesses impacted in New Jersey than in Katrina, and the storm throughout the metropolitan area. What's your take on that?
Congressman, we have never seen damage along the coastal counties in New Jersey like what we saw after Sandy. And, you know, I'm just so happy that the Disaster Relief Fund has got enough money in it to meet all the immediate needs for public assistance and individual assistance. And we're just extremely proud of the great effort that you and others did in order to be able to get that supplemental through. And I know that that's going to help us in the future to build safer and stronger and mitigate some of those things that happened during this last event. So I think we were all very, very happy when it was finally taken care of. And I believe that we all wondered why it was taken the amount of time.
Do you think FEMA is in the position right now to really help rebuild many of these, help rebuild these areas? I mean, the federal government can't do everything,
right?
But it does have responsibilities and obligations in a storm of nature. Do you think you're in the position to really respond, and do you have the communications capability to keep up with citizens who feel they're being bureaucratic, moved from here to here in the other place? I mean, people get ticked off. I mean, any of us would get ticked off if we didn't feel the electric is going on in time, or you see all the damage, it's not being taken away, or what are you doing to stop the next storm from causing this kind of damage?
Congressman, we have got a great partnership with the state of New Jersey at the state level and at the local and municipal level, and we work real hard with all of those planners in order to be able to get our word out as to what it is that we can assist with. And I think overall, for the effort and the amount of damage and the number of people that were affected during Sandy, the entire team, the federal, state, local, and private sector have done a fantastic job in making sure that they take care of people. And I never saw the response go as well as what it did during Sandy for the size of the operation that was required. So I'm very proud to be in New Jersey. I'm very proud of the efforts.
Where are you from?
I'm from Toms River, Congressman.
Toms River? Oh, you're the local guy.
That's right.
And we saw what happened down there.
Toms River got hit pretty hard.
Yes.
And, but the overall effort, the community planning, the whole community effort in order to be able to respond to this, I think is fantastic.
Ralph, what do you see in the future? What do you see in the future? What have you learned, and you're going to do better? You know you're going to do better the next time. Hope it never comes the next time, but you're going to be doing this better. Public Service Electric and Gas Company.
Yeah, well, we're gonna do a little better from the hardening of the stations. I mentioned that earlier. We're gonna try to do what we can on the substations. We're gonna be better on our communications. We've got plans where we're gonna start be able to communicate with text messaging and all sorts of social media that we have not done in the past. We're gonna communicate better with the local responders, as you said. They're on the front lines. We gotta make sure that they have the right information to give to their folks. We'll continue to communicate as well as we can with our congressional leaders. You know, you just having you come out to meet the crews and to see all the people from around the country, that means so much to folks because they see the engagement and then they know everybody's pulling in the same direction. So, you know, the more that we have that communication, the better. And then finally, we're going to go after the trees. I know it's a big thing for us here in New Jersey, but at the end of the day, most of the damage that caused the delay was all due to trees, and we've got to put some laws in place. The federal government did a nice job after the 2003 blackout putting distinct rules in place to have tree trimming around the transmission lines, which they govern. We need to do the same thing here in New Jersey.
Right. Do you think that's a major part of our problem on getting back up again?
Yeah. The 1 million customers that were impacted from overhead damage, it was all about the trees.
You don't have any people that are out of their homes right now, do you, Mayor?
No, everyone's back. And
everybody's
safe,
back.
I just got to compliment the Public Service. Their long-range plan, right now they're putting in an underground transmission wire from the Richfield power station to Athenia in Clifton. They're coming through our town. We're cooperating with them 100%.
Right.
This will, network the power so that if one station goes down, another one could take over. But I know they had a tree service in our town for the last month, taking care of all of the trees that are in the high tension wires, the primary wires, and I think that's all part of it. They've been doing a good job in our town.
And you're allowing us to do it, which is 90% of the battle. That's still home rule, so the local municipality determines how much trimming we can do. So you're allowing us to do it. That's going to give better service to your customers. We're going to have, wherever the local mayors work. Are some towns
giving you a hard time?
Oh, absolutely. There's still towns that tell us. We have one, which I'll go unnamed at this point, which we have the Shade Tree Commissioner literally hold up his finger and say, if it's thicker than this, you can't trim it. We're not going to have good service in that area. Well, Wallington's looking at it in a much better and more proactive way.
So that's why you're saying you need some state law to say, wait a minute here, people's safety and health are more important than aesthetics. Although aesthetics are important, beautiful trees, every town wants to have trees. Yep. But if they're impeding progress, if they're impeding you fixing the problem, then we got to do something about that.
And maybe it even means taking some down and putting up some pear trees and some lower growing trees so that we don't have the impact on the wires.
Well, that's what we have a program. They call me Johnny Appleseed because I like to plant trees.
I think that's great.
We got to take a look at, instead of planting the trees between the curb and the sidewalk, planted on the property side of the right-of-way, because when you plant them between the curb and sidewalk, that's right above the utility wires. If you plant them on the property side, it gives them a better chance of growing and trimming. Yep. And we've used trees that are not fast-growing. I have about 100 Japanese pagoda trees we planted, and they're a nice tree. They have flowering. They flower in June. We do Kwanzaa cherries, and I'm getting away from the pear trees, Ralph, because they hold their leaves late in the season.
And we didn't get into. Thank you very much, Mayor, but we didn't get into the very issue because we have to close it down now about the utilities in the state. I mean, we have the Passaic Valley Sewage Commission, which services all this area. 1/4 of the state, I believe, is serviced by Passaic Valley Sewage Commission. They are not processing raw sewage right now to the extent that of health and safety. And that's serious business. It's going to cost them hundreds, $300 million at least, to fix the apparatus because it was damaged during the storm. We need federal money to do that because there's about 7 or 8 utilities like that throughout the state of New Jersey. And I believe Passaic Valley is one of the largest in the country. So thank you so much. You've done a great job, all 3 of you. Give a little capsule picture. I want to thank you for watching this edition of To The Point. You've heard our thoughts. Now I would like to hear what you think about today's show. If you have any comments, concerns, or questions, stay tuned. Our address, phone number, website address will appear in a moment. Thanks again for tuning in. See you next time on To The Point. And thank you, gentlemen. And let's hope there's not another storm for a long time.
Thank you, gentlemen.